Welcome back. In this video, I have another little challenge for you, and that is the following. Since even after we guess the right number, the game still goes on and we need to implement a way to stop that. So change the code so that when the answer is found, the game won't accept any further answers. And then a little hint. A button has a Boolean variable called interactable. Simply set this variable to false when the user gives a correct answer. We will need to add a reference to our button in the script, however, in order to do that. Okay, so pause the video and try to finish the challenge. Okay, so I hope you tried it. It was probably not so easy, but that's fine. So first of all, we will need to have a reference to our button. So let's add a button in here. And I'm going to call this one game button. Now you see if you hover over it, that it's also inside of Unity Engine UI, and then there is this class called button, similar to what we had with text and input field. So now this button will have a property that allows us to deactivate it. Okay, in order to deactivate it, we need to use this property called interactable. And where would it make sense for us to use this? Well, it actually makes sense in our on button click in here. So here, once we know that we were correct, we can go ahead and use our game button to use the interactable property and set that to false, like so. And at this point, we cannot press the button anymore because once we were correct, we will not be able to press the button. Okay, so that's basically it. Let's now save this script. Let's go back to Unity. And here, let's go to our game logic and make sure that we drag our button here to game button or select it from here. And now our game button will be defined in there and will be deactivatable, so to speak. So let's run it. And let's guess the right number between 15 and 25. Of course, 13 is not an option here because it's not between 15 and 25. Lower, okay, 16. Well, in that case, it's 17. And we can see that our button now is not interactable with. Okay, and now I would say this is probably going to be too much of a challenge, but still, what I would like you to try now is to adjust the game. So once you have found the solution, instead of making the button uninteractable with, instead what we want to do is we want to reset the state. So what do we need to reset? Well, we need to reset the text here, as well as we need to reset the random number. So we need to create a new random number. Okay, so you can either try that or you can just follow along. So if you want to try it, pause the video now. Okay, I hope you paused the video and tried it and you were successful. And if you weren't, no problem at all. So basically what we want to do is we want to use that same code that we did here and redo it once we won the game, so to speak. Okay, so I'm just going to create a new method here, private void reset game. And the only thing that it will need to do is to run these lines of code. So what I can do now is I can cut them out and now use reset game inside of the start method. Now, of course, it's not resetting at the start method, so you could call it set game, for example, but resetting the game at the beginning of the game is not a bad idea. It's totally fine. So now we can actually reset the game once we have the right answer. So here we can comment this line out where we make the button uninteractable with, and we can actually call our reset game method. So reset game like so. And now let's save the script and go back to Unity. And now let's run it. And it says guess a number between 15 and, well, it's actually, let me change that. Let me make it easier for myself. So it will be a number between 1 and 3. Because then it will only, or 0 and 3, because then it will only be able to select 3 numbers. So let me enter 1, try higher, 2, and then it refreshes it. So it says guess a number between 0 and 2. So in this case, we could change a couple more things. So we could reset the text that is displayed here so we make sure that it's empty again. So in order to reset the game then, what we also need to do is we need to reset the user input. So here, user input.text should be set to an empty string. So we want to reset it, right? So now let's run it again. Let's save this script. Let's go back to Unity. And actually, let's stop the game, clear the console, and now rerun the game. And let's guess it, try higher, okay, 2. And now you see it says enter text, guess a number between 0 and 2. So 1, try lower, okay, let's enter 0. And it says guess a number between 0 and 2. So what we could of course now add is another text that says you won, or we could display the text you won here. But then we would also have to check if we just started the game or if we reset the game. So we would have to have another variable up here, and this one can be private because it doesn't need to be used anywhere else. And this one will be a boolean, is game won, and this one will be set to false by default. And now if we won the game, so here at this point we could set the is game won variable to true. And then once we reset the game, we could set this variable back to false. So is game won, let's set that to false. By the way, if you didn't come up with this in your solution, it's totally fine, because it was really not that in-depth stated. So this is really just to teach you a little more about other things that you should consider. So here we also need to check if the game is won, so is game won, and if it's true, then we want to change the label to something else, and we want to make sure that the game is won set to false. So you won, and now guess the number between so and so. But else, what we need to do is we need to change the game label to just guess a number between so and so. So if the game is not won, then we have just started the game and we're going to set the text to something default. And if the game was won, then we're going to display you won, and then we are resetting the is game won variable, because at this point it is set to true. Okay, so this is an if statement that we're using here, and we're checking this variable, and basically the condition in those brackets has to be true, right? And if the condition is just a boolean, then basically the boolean has to be true for this code here to be executed. So by default, when we run the game, this will be false because we define it as false in the declaration of the variable here. So we initialize it with false. But once we actually play the game and we have won and we had the right number, then the value will be set to 1 and it will display a different text. So now let's save the script once again. And let's also make sure that we save our game scene, by the way. Let's run it. And let's enter a value here. Okay, it says you won, guess a number between 0 and 2. 1, we won again, okay. This time we lost. And of course we're winning all the time because I just have 3 values in between which I can select. But if I had 10 values or 15 values, it would be a very different story. Okay, so that's it for this video, and actually also for this game. In the next one, we're going to learn a little more about the general concepts of C# programming. So see you there.